What happens when your best friend becomes your co-founder? Would you trade a stable career to sell yogurt? How do two friends go from corporate jobs to 10K followers and a cult following for their yogurt company? This isn't just a startup story. It's a bet on friendship, instinct, and a really good idea. Let's get into it.
5 to 10 years ago, there wasn't really a market for a new dairy yogurt to come onto the scene. We were really thinking about what was next for both of us. We both had been in our jobs for 4 years at that point. You know, we'd been working at the same places. We'd learned a ton, and it felt like it was time to actually implement those learnings in a way that we felt would be impactful in the world.
When I looked at conventional yogurt on the shelf, I learned that most of it isn't actually probiotic. Many yogurts will do what's called pasteurize after they ferment. And what that does is it kills off all the bacteria. Like Kiki's, in bed at 11 p.m. like editing content,
yes.
Right? And that's like for work, right? I'm like up at 6 a.m. like dealing with yogurt stuff.
I think the consumer is tired of celebrity brands.
Welcome back to Founders in Motion. We have the best friend duo behind Beny Yogurt, Kiki and Elan, joining us. Kiki blew up on social media with her series Quitting My Job in Private Equity to start a yogurt company with my best friend. And what I love about their story is it's a twist on the classic startup story. Instead of two best friends in a garage building the next social media, you have two best friends in a kitchen changing the way we see a very conventional product like yogurt. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
What a sweet introduction. I've never been compared in that way to the garage Silicon Valley boys, but I guess we have similar origin starts at Stanford.
And so how did it come to life?
Yeah. So a couple years ago, I was having a whole host of gut health issues. And this manifested in several ways. It would be things like bloating after eating or inflammation or brain fog the next day. I think the moment where I specifically knew I had to take it really seriously was when I got a hormone panel done and learned that all of my hormones were at an all-time low. And when I started to learn how to heal my gut and improve some of these symptoms I was having, I learned that one of the best ways to do so is by taking probiotics. Ideally, you get probiotics from foods that you eat, as opposed to taking a pill or a supplement. And the reason for that is because it's a lot more what's called bioavailable. So your body can actually digest it a lot better than it can a pill. So I was an athlete at Stanford. I played Division I rowing. And after practice every single morning, we'd all eat Greek yogurt, which was great. And I was like, okay, I'm already eating Greek yogurt. All I have to do is eat more of this stuff and then I'll get all my probiotics. But as it turns out, when I looked at conventional yogurt on the shelf, I learned that most of it isn't actually probiotic. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is because many yogurts will do what's called pasteurize after they ferment. And what that does is it kills off all the bacteria. So now you have this yogurt that can last a really, really long time, but it has no active cultures in it. Number two is yogurt's made with bacteria strains that are really, really good for making yogurt, but not necessarily really good for your gut. So there's tens of thousands of different strains, all play really different roles. And the yogurt strains are awesome at making yogurt, but not necessarily designed to be good for your gut. And so what I started doing for myself was taking these bacteria that are really designed to have benefits for your microbiome and fermenting them into yogurt. So now all of a sudden I could have this thing that I was already eating every single day be really, really good for my gut. And that's kind of like the origin of Beny.
I think the origin story is really that it's coming from like a passion and from a personal health journey, which really means, everyone gives us the advice of like, whenever you're starting a business, it's really, really hard. And so make sure it's coming from a place where you're really fueled by like a passion and a broader purpose. And for us, I think that really rings true of, aside from that, like who wouldn't want to build a company with their best friend in a way?
Obviously,
I think that's been a really, really fun and like one of the best parts of this, in addition to the actual product of what we're building. Earlier this year when we were, I guess now last year, it's 2025 now, so earlier last year, 2024, I know, we were really thinking about what was next for both of us. We both had been in our jobs for 4 years at that point. We graduated, we were COVID graduates, so we graduated in 2020 from Stanford. And we'd been working at the same places. We'd learned a ton, and it felt like it was time to actually implement those learnings in a way that we felt would be impactful in the world. And so when we started to think about what those experiences were, what that impact was that we wanted to create, it became super clear. Let's try and scale this thing that Elan has already, built and made and healed herself with. How can we bring that to a much broader population? And so that was very clear to us from the beginning. And then, it felt very obvious that we should work together on this, because I think, yes, it's super fun to work with a best friend, maybe not all best friends. As they say, like, it's not always the best idea to go into business with friends, but I think this was a very clear partnership where we felt like we know how each other thinks extremely well, we respect each other a ton, and there's synergies in areas where we are better than the other, and vice versa.
The idea that if we consume microbiomes through food, that's always the best method. And obviously 2/3 of Americans have gut health issues. Everyone consumes yogurt on a daily basis. Why hasn't a product like this been created? Why has it been favored to be pasteurized?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So there's a couple of things here. One is shelf life. As a food brand, the moment you produce to the moment it is in a refrigerator in someone's house is actually a really long time, generally speaking, especially if you're producing in New York but selling in California. It takes a long time for that product to travel. So as a brand, you want to basically try as much as possible to make that shelf life as long as it can possibly be. And one way of doing that is by killing off any potential bacteria that could cause that to go bad. And so there's just an incentive there from a brand standpoint to, extend that duration of that product for as long as possible. The second thing is that the yogurt bacteria strains are really good at making yogurt. Other strains that might be really beneficial for your gut don't necessarily make a really, really yummy yogurt. At the end of the day, when you're selling a food product, you have to sell something that tastes good. So part of the challenge with Beny is both coming up with a recipe that actually has legitimate health benefits and tastes really good.
The other thing that I'm gonna just jump on to what Elan said is, like, why hasn't the yogurt industry focused on this? I would say that Chobani, if you look at America, there's like a whole case study of Chobani and how they came in and they really made Greek yogurt mainstream, and they took, something that was either this sort of sugary, random thing, that yogurt, and it was not a daily product, or it was in like a, ethnic grocery store. So like not in your Walmart or your Target or your, big chain grocery stores. And they were really able to, make Greek yogurt mainstream. And since then, there's been a huge focus on protein. And so yogurt has a huge, everything on their label is protein, protein, protein. And whenever I speak to customers about yogurt, the first question they ask is how much protein is in your yogurt. And I think that just shows how much the consumer, and how much, honestly, the yogurt industry has trained the consumer to care about protein and not about probiotics and not about the bacteria that's actually in that yogurt. And so Greek yogurt inherently has a lot of protein because of the way it's made and because it's made with dairy that already has a lot of protein. They've just chosen to isolate that macronutrient, that one fact of protein, and really market it a ton. And so that's now what we've been trained as consumers to care a lot about, rather than caring about the bacteria. So that's sort of forced the industry wave, and our bet is that people still care about protein, but now they're caring a lot more about gut health. And so the next iteration of what yogurt will look like for this industry will include, the conversation will have to include protein and bacteria, live bacteria.
If you think about the Greek yogurt movement, it's only been the last, 10 years that it's become really mainstream, especially more in Western countries. And now I would love to talk a little bit more about kind of your journey. So you guys have been super transparent about your startup journey on social media, and people love it. What's been the most rewarding interaction from sharing your story?
The most rewarding social media moment for us has been, maybe it was 2 months ago. So I had sort of
December.
Yeah, it was in December, and I had it was 1 month into me starting on social media, and I actually had already gone home. I'm going to tell the story, but I actually wasn't even there. I had already gone home to California, and it was the days leading up to Christmas, and Elan was still in the city, and she was actually heading out to Pennsylvania to go to a family gathering for Christmas over in Pennsylvania. And so on the way, she decided to stop at one of the biggest, a huge co-manufacturer. So a big facility that manufactures a lot of different yogurt brands. And in some ways, we are too early for that, right? Like this was in December. We weren't even full time on this, but we really just wanted to start educating ourselves around, what do co-manufacturers look like? What do they care about? All of those things. Now they're doing yogurt orders that are on the production, that is on the scale of tens of thousands of units of yogurt a week, which is just not what we can accommodate right now, given our current demand and current size. And so Elan had gone through the whole factory tour with them. She really got along with them. She was on her usual Elan spotlight. And so she was basically selling hard on why they should care about Beny. And by the end, they were so excited about work. They really wanted to make it work. They wanted to be partners with us, all of those things. She pulls out of the parking lot and drives away, and she gets a call back from a random number. And it's actually somebody who just works at the factory that she just was visiting, and says, can you turn around right now? We have the owner, back here at the factory who wants to meet you. She turns around. I know. She turns around. And she goes back in, and in addition to the owner being there are two other young women who are like our age who work for one of our competitors who is actually manufacturing at that co-man. They're not like competitors, but they're just another yogurt person in the industry, And they immediately recognized Elan from my social media. And they said, oh my gosh, they said to the owners, we need to work with them. We need to support them. We've been following this yogurt brand through my social media for the past month, and we're doing everything we can to root them on. They've done such a good job storytelling, whatever. They're just gushing about how bought in they are to our brand. And granted, they run the social media accounts of like these other yogurt companies, and even still, they felt so excited for us to succeed and sort of pushing everybody in their industry to support us, to help us succeed too. So I think that was just like a testament to not only is it potential customers, but it's also people in the industry who are seeing us and want to help us, given, how new we are and how much that they want other people to succeed.
I love that. That's such a great story. And are you guys thinking of potentially working with them in the future?
Yeah, we'd love to be able to partner them in the future. They've been just such an incredible resource for us. And I think it's also a really good reminder that, like, yes, there's competition in the space, but at the end of the day, like, Kiki and my goal is to create more yogurt people. Like, we want to have more people who are buying and eating yogurt on a regular basis. And right now, very few people can get Beny, especially if you're not in New York City. And so by us kind of sharing the benefits of yogurt and sort of increasing the pie, we're also driving business to other yogurt brands. And so there's just been this like very strong camaraderie between other yogurt companies wanting to help us and wanting to see us succeed, because a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, I love that. I wish I was still in New York just to try Beny at one of your pop-ups. And then I would love to talk about the flip side of things. So obviously sharing your story on social media. What has been the downside of being so public?
Yeah, I think that I would say there's two sides of it. One is the perception that it gives. And so I think people think we're a lot further along than we are in some ways. Like, people are asking me, where can I buy it? Where is it, right? Like, are you guys in Whole Foods? Are you, in all these grocery stores? And ultimately, no, most brands for the first at least 12 months are not in a grocery store. They're building up their supply chain. They're figuring out their demand. And you don't see that as a consumer. Like, you actually only know the second that they hit the grocery store shelves. And so in a way, it's great because we're showing that these things take time and that we're putting in the time and we're making the right decisions and we're going about this growth in a very strategic and methodical way. But on the other side, I think there's a real sort of urgency and almost like unrealistic expectations that people have of us because we are so upfront about where we are and because we're so public and have gained some attention from it. And then I would say the other side is like my personal side. There's like a very real toll, and I think I've been able to manage it, and I've had to shift my mindset in order to do that. But there's a very real toll to putting yourself out there every single day and being able to do that and share the wins wins and the losses and everything that come with it. And I think, Instagram used to be my personal Instagram, and now it's like totally a strategy. It's a channel, right? Like it's a channel to reach more customers. And until I made that switch in my head, like it still felt personal, right? Like every view that I didn't get, every like that I didn't get, every follow I didn't get, that felt personal. Now it's just, okay, something's not working. This is a demand gen thing, and how do I make sure that this marketing is better and that I can do it better? And so being able to sort of separate those things is also important.
This is the last thread I will pull on this, but you've grown your Instagram following to 10K in no time and counting. Looking back on that ride, what type of content really made people want to follow?
Totally. I quit my job in private equity to start my best friend.
So fair.
I think it's the content. I think what resonates the most with people, and I think the intentional, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm intentionally building on my personal Instagram and not on our Beny Instagram. And I think the real conversion there from views to followers is all about a personal story and feeling like they're rooting for somebody and not something. And if I was building from Beny Yogurt, we are subliminally always selling something to you. And in order to actually convert people and to gain an audience that's authentic and engaged, and by the way, everything I do put out is extremely authentic. Like in no way am I, thinking about how to get more followers in this exact way or say this thing. Like that would be too hard. I need to just put out how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and what I'm doing every single day. And that in itself, I think has been the key to actually converting people, is showing them that I'm on this journey and that I'm doing something that feels so risky and it's actually crazy. Like that sentence is absurd, that I quit my job in private equity to start a yogurt company with my best friend. But that because of that, they want to be in that with me and they want to witness that with me. And so that's definitely been the most successful. And I think why I'm still continuing to build on my personal is because it allows me to connect with people more authentically rather than it feeling constantly like, a potential sale.
I will definitely say that's really the series that got me hooked on your stories as well. So I can definitely resonate as an audience. We mentioned this a little bit, but starting a business with your college best friend sounds like an absolute dream. But what's been the best part of working as a duo, but also what are some ground rules that you have to keep things running smoothly?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we first became full-time on Beny, so we were working on Beny nights and weekends for a couple months before actually going full-time. It was like the mornings before our full-time jobs and the evenings after our full-time jobs were like dedicated to Beny. And the day we went full-time, it was back in January, we sat down and we discussed like what are the number one things we need to talk about and like set ground rules for. And the first thing we discussed was, well, there were two things. One is, how is our friendship going to be affected by us building a company together? And like, what are the expectations that we have with our friendship and the ground rules there? And then two is, how are we going to resolve conflict? Because I think at the end of the day, like, I don't know what the stat is, but like over 50% of startups fail because of like co-founder breakups and co-founder issues with the idea. And so conflict resolution is a huge part of it. Luckily for us, like we were super, super aligned on it. And I think as best friends, that's like our superpower.
So I see you out and about, constantly doing partnerships, hosting events, making moves across New York every weekend. How do you think about setting personal boundaries and detaching from work, if you do?
Like, there's no boundaries at all. My nights are like, I'm getting invited to this dinner event on a Monday night. I have a walk after this with the guy who runs a Supper Club series, and it's like 6 p.m. on a Monday night, right? Yeah. And then like tomorrow we are full jam-packed. We might be going up to a farm on Thursday and like having to just blow off everything and be there. But it hasn't been a problem in terms of like how I want to live my life.
Like Kiki's, in bed at 11 p.m. like editing content,
yes.
Right? And that's like for work. Right? I'm like up at 6 a.m. like dealing with yogurt stuff, and that's also for work. But it's just a part of our everyday life, and we don't really see it as like, oh, I have to show up to work today.
And one other thing that I'll also say is that an interesting part of any industry, but I think particularly as young founders who are new to a space, making friends and being like in the network of other founders who are starting food CPG brands, who are in the restaurant industry, who are doing dairy, who are, in the marketing or PR, like all of that is actually very crucial for our success, but also has been a really fun and new explorative part of starting this company, is being able to meet new connections and like build new community in those spaces where we wouldn't have had access to before because we weren't in this industry. So it's like totally blurred lines, but also been really fun and like nothing else than that right now, at least at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it also helps that you're doing it with your best friend, right? So you're kind of you're kind of hanging out while you're working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of why this is so fun for us.
Yeah, totally.
And then it wouldn't be the show if we didn't talk about roadblocks and challenges. So what's been the toughest challenge in building Beny so far, and how did you guys push through it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, like, with the mindset of us building in the public, we can tell you about some of the challenges we're thinking about right now. And so with consumer food brands, a lot of the latest and greatest CPG companies that you'll see will be a protein bar or a potato chip or a drink. And the commonality between these things is that they're shelf stable. You actually don't have to worry about a ticking time bomb for expiration, and they're also really cheap to produce and have high margins. So what you can do as a CPG, which is like, this is one strategy. It's not the strategy that we take or want to take, but what you could have done is, okay, we want to start a yogurt company. Let's go find a food scientist, and let's go find a factory, and let's go create our design and our product and our label, and then go make a ton of yogurt. And then let's go try and sell it to grocery stores or D2C or whatever that might look like. The reason why we can't do that is because we are a perishable dairy-based product.
That
right?
also has to be on cold chain. At every single point in the supply chain, we need to be refrigerated.
Which means that we have to focus on creating distribution and marketing and demand before we go into production. And it also means that at any given point in time, we want to be producing to meet our demand, not overproducing where we have too much product and we don't have anyone to sell it to. And so part of the challenge where we're at is finding the right co-manufacturer or co-packer who can meet the demand that we're growing to without jumping too far ahead.
Then the other side of the challenge is how do we make sure we're continuing to increase that demand and not just relying on the traditional ways of distribution to get our name out there. You will notice that most yogurt brands do not build in public. You'll notice that actually most food CPG brands have very little footprint on the digital footprint landscape, and that they're spending almost all their marketing dollars to get into Walmart, to get into Target, to get into Whole Foods, and then to buy an end cap or a promotion, or to have, a demo in the store, or to have an end cap for people is like, one of those big things at the end of the aisle that's branded with them, or that their product is at the end of the aisle. And that's because they're playing the game of marketing doesn't matter that much. You just need to get their attention when they're in the store, the shopper. And we think that's true, and we cannot rely on that given we only have, we have a much shorter shelf life. And so that's why it's really important for us to build in public, to basically have and build a virtual line out the door at any given time. So when we do hit the grocery store shelves, people already know our brand and they already feel activated and excited to try our yogurt and to buy it. So that way we can ideally fly off shelves when we're ready.
I want to talk about trends shaping the food industry. So what are some of the biggest trends shaping the food industry and specifically the yogurt aisle that the team is seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we already touched on it, but protein, it's now become like a meme. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you feel like that, but everything is proteinified. Like, you literally will see, there's protein waters now. It's just like every single thing has the protein slapped on the label and like huge branding, and it's a whole new thing. So that's number one that's shaping the food industry, which I think, again, that's sort of a tailwind for us because Greek yogurt inherently already has a lot of protein in the way that it's made. And so that's sort of a natural and already trained. The consumer's already trained to know that. And so we don't need to do as much education around that. I think another, which Elan briefly sort of alluded to with saying our thesis on dairy is I think there is a real trend back towards whole animal products and just the outer aisles of a grocery store generally. And so what that means is, again, like produce, meats, dairy, those less processed foods. And we're seeing that specifically with animal products. There was probably about 5 to 10 years ago, there wasn't really a market for a new dairy yogurt to come onto the scene. There were so many alternatives. There was, all these soy-based, oat milk, almond milk, all those types of things for the non-dairy eaters. And now, because of a broader awareness on health and the high processedness of these alternatives, and spiking your blood glucose level, like all the soybean stuff, like all of those things, there's now definitely a trend back towards dairy. And you'll see that with like social media and, culture setters. And now also in the US, even with this current administration, there's definitely a push more towards those things. So I'd say those are the biggest things. And then I'd say like the last thing, which maybe is less about consumer habits, but definitely potentially more about our marketing strategy, is I think the consumer is tired of celebrity brands. I feel like 2024 was like the total apex of celebrity brands, and we saw Alex Cooper, there's Prime from Logan and Jake Paul, there's, Mr. Beast with Mr. Feast with Feastables, like all of these new CPG products. And I, at least as a consumer, feel a little fatigued from that. So I think that we've seen almost that wave is cresting. And I think there's a lot more room for fresher, more bootstrapped, community-driven, on-the-ground brands that are building from the ground up and really can include the customer in the experience and not just sort of pop out a finished product everywhere in the US.
And one thing that I've noticed when you mention all these celebrity brands is a lot of them end up being like energy drinks or some kind of beverage / shelf-life products like chocolate. I would love to learn a bit more about your perspective on independent brands breaking into grocery stores.
It's hard. I think that my perspective is that, it is grocery stores, the consumer only sees the tip of the iceberg. It is a lot of work to get into a grocery store. Yeah. And there are so many hoops to jump. And, the level of like margin cut that you get as a brand to be in a grocery store, sort of some have a pay to play model, all these different things make it really hard for a new independent brand to break into a grocery store. Yeah. And they're really built for these legacy brands. They're really built for brands at scale to really continue to scale, to continue churning out new SKUs, so like new products within, a certain category, and allow those to scale because they already have the inroads and distribution. But the flip side of that is if you can break in, you can really be on a pretty quick ramp to growing your brand into, doubling your revenue and going sort of all the way up that sort of logarithmic curve, exponential curve. And so there's sort of a high barrier to entry, but I think once you're there, grocery stores are really set up to allow you a wide amount of distribution and to potentially turn your brand, your small independent brand, into a legacy brand down the line.
Yeah. And the two things I would add to that are, one is we are probably choosing one of the hardest products to launch in. We are choosing a animal-based perishable product. So that's like the hardest thing you can do when it comes to choosing a product in the grocery store. But I think that part of the reason why we're so excited about it is because yogurt has like 92% household penetration. So it's very widely used. We're a product that we want people to be eating every single day.
I would love to see 92% of Americans, everyone to have Beny in their kitchen one day.
I
that
love
is
that.
the goal.
Good stat. Good stat. You listened.
So, guys, what's next for Beny? What are the team's top priorities in the next few months?
I would say that priority number one for growing our brand is really seeing through our demand. So we really want to make sure that we can saturate New York City almost outside of grocery stores, so we can sort of have a hold and simulate that experience of, shopping from a grocery store, but through pop-up events, through demos, through all of those things. And the way we're going to get there is growing my social media. And so my goal is, how do I make sure everybody in our target demographic sees me at least 10 times in the New York City area? Or ideally they follow me. That's the biggest thing. And then, number 2, how do they make sure they're trying our yogurt? So how do we live as Beny Yogurt in all the places that our customer lives? Whether that's at, yoga studios, we're doing something at a Pilates studio next month. We'll be, at a coffee shop like every other week. We're going to be at like the hottest bagels place next week, actually tomorrow. And so how do we make sure that those people are trying our yogurt, so by the time we're in grocery stores, they are so ready and activated to buy our yogurt?
Super exciting. I can't wait to see Beny absolutely explode in 2025 and to eventually have Beny in Australia to try it.
I would love that.
We'd love that.
Okay, do you think every founder should be building in public? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to check out more early stage founder stories, you can check out this playlist. And until next time, do hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps out the channel and helps us continue to deliver these stories to you and to more people out there. Okay, bye for now.